Al chet shechatanu lefanecha, for the sin we've committed against you by lying, for the sin we've committed against you through speech, for the sin we've committed against you in passing judgment. Oh boy, we have a lot of atoning to do. But that last one, it stopped me short. The sin of passing judgment. I understand the sins of lying or cheating or speaking ill, but that judgmental thought in my head, we have to atone for that. Our tradition understands judgments hold great power. On this holiest day of 5784, as we communally atone, I want to address an issue in the Jewish community that we have perhaps most openly judged: intermarriage. And we've justified our disapproval in the name of Jewish continuity. You may already be aware that I am the product of an intermarriage, a Jewish American father to a Korean Buddhist mother. But it might surprise you that my sister and I grew up facing some familiar pressures. I'll never forget when my sister brought home her first college boyfriend for Thanksgiving, and he happened to be Korean. My mom pulled me into the kitchen, and she whispered, "When is she going to find a nice Jewish boy?" Even my Korean Buddhist mother had internalized the Jewish mother's mantra. Like many of you, I've also adopted the Jewish mother's mantra, and to say otherwise would risk that my children and yours could walk out of this sermon thinking that I don't care if they create Jewish homes or Jewish grandchildren. I do care. A lot. But the persistent mandate to marry someone Jewish is not the only path to Jewish continuity, nor is it sufficient. It may even be backfiring. You see, the American Jewish community has been saying this for over 70 years, but it hasn't stopped our children from falling in love with people who aren't Jewish. The intermarriage rate for non-Orthodox Jews has only grown to over 70%. So for the vast majority of our kids, regarding the most consequential emotional decision of their lives, we're essentially telling them, "You've let us down, and all your ancestors." Our judgment has turned many Jews away. We all want to see Judaism thrive and endure, but Jewish continuity has never just relied on marrying Jewish. And if you don't believe me, let's go back to a rabbi's favorite source. You see, intermarriage is as old as the Bible. Joseph married an Egyptian. Moses married a Midianite. King Solomon had multiple non-Jewish wives. Queen Esther's intermarriage saved our people. The Bible has no universal prohibition on intermarriage, only on certain restricted tribes who threatened to lead Israel astray. But our exile to Babylon in the 6th century BCE changed our identity as a nation. When the Israelites were allowed to return to Israel just 70 years later, most had acculturated so successfully in Babylon that they didn't want to leave, even to go back to our homeland. The scribes and scholars, Ezra and Nehemiah, were among the few who did return, and they were dismayed to see most of the Israelites who had stayed in Israel had married women from other tribes. Worried for Jewish continuity, Ezra took an extreme position. He demanded that intermarried men divorce their wives and disown their children. Ezra introduced the concept of Zerah Kodesh, the requirement of holy seed, a racial Jewish essence that only comes through two Jewish parents. But Ezra did not have the final word. Around the same time as Ezra, the Book of Ruth appeared. Ruth was a Moabite, one of the biblically prohibited tribes, who nevertheless marries an Israelite. When Ruth's Jewish husband dies, she refuses to abandon her mother-in-law. This alone would make her a saint if we did that kind of thing. Ruth accompanies Naomi back to Israel, even as it makes Ruth a stranger herself. She utters these famous words of devotion, "Wherever you go, I will go. Your people are my people. Your God, my God." Professor Yair Zakovich, a preeminent Bible scholar from Hebrew University, argues that the Book of Ruth was written as a radically inclusive response to Ezra's cruel intermarriage policy. Ruth goes on to become the great-grandmother of King David and the future Messiah. This sacred text makes explicit the redemption of the Jewish people will come through a foreigner who we welcome into the house of Israel. The Book of Ruth rejects the idea that belonging to the Jewish community is about Zerah Kodesh, holy seed, and instead sets up an ideal for conversion to Judaism, which is about dedication to our people and our God. Fast forward 2,500 years to 1948, the founding of the State of Israel. And once again, Jews were miraculously welcomed to come back to our homeland. But by then, the vast majority of American Jews had assimilated so successfully in our new nation that very few of us returned. We remained in America, and we started to intermarry. At first, these unions were viewed as a positive sign of Jewish acceptance. But as the numbers rose in the 1960s, Jewish sociologists, relying on the new oracle of data, declared intermarriage the single greatest threat to Jewish survival. When intermarriage rates hit 50% in the 1990s, some rabbis even called it a second Holocaust. Not unlike the time of Ezra, we were insecure about our Jewish future. And many in the mainstream Jewish community took an Ezra-like approach. Families sat Shiva for children who intermarried. Synagogues rejected non-Jewish partners as members. Rabbis refused to officiate intermarriages. We shunned and we shamed. But in 1978, Rabbi Alexander Schindler, the president of the Reform movement, risked a radically different approach. So radical it made the front page of the New York Times. Schindler advocated a three-part outreach plan. First, do a much better job of welcoming those who convert. Second, do everything possible to include and welcome the non-Jewish partners into our community and their children. And third, and most controversial, be champions of Judaism to the world. In short, proselytize. Schindler's revolutionary plan provoked criticism, even within the Reform movement. And yet, over time, this outreach approach fundamentally changed American Jewish life. I know it changed mine. It meant that my family was welcomed in our Tacoma synagogue in the 1970s. It meant that my mother could stand next to me on the bima when I became bat mitzvah. It meant that I was fully accepted as a Jew of patrilineal descent. It's no exaggeration to say that I would not be a rabbi today, or even a Jew, were it not for Rabbi Schindler's courageous belief that intermarriage was not just a threat, but an opportunity. Schindler believed it wasn't intermarriage itself, but the community's response to it that would decide the fate of Jewish continuity. 2 generations later, we can see that Rabbi Schindler was prophetic. Before Schindler's outreach revolution, the percentage of children of intermarriage, like me, who identified as Jewish, was in the single digits. Today, more than 2/3 of intermarried families are raising their children as Jews. Now, I'm not great at math, but that sounds like a formula for Jewish growth. Yet we still treat intermarriage as a threat. It's true. Creating Jewish identity can take more work for children of intermarriage, who are still less likely to identify as Jewish as children of 2 Jewish parents. But I want to let you in on a little secret. It's often the non-Jewish parent who encourages the Jewish identity in a family, who enables us to see our holidays and our rituals with fresh eyes, who raises Jewish children and drives the Hebrew school carpool. I see it every day. For reasons that are as diverse as each one of them, they have not chosen to convert. So we will not call them B'nai Yisrael, the children of Israel. But we should see them as Bonei Yisrael, the builders of Israel. These non-Jewish parents and partners sitting here in this room and watching online, like my mother, deserve our gratitude and our honor for the many ways they have built Jewish families and Jewish communities. For example, right here at Central, in addition to your senior rabbi, Cantor Jenna Pearsall, Rabbi Chelsea Fuchs, Cantor Julia Cadrain, all encouraged me to share that they too are children of intermarriage. It's time for our Jewish community to stop passing judgment and to recognize the reality and the blessing of having Bonei Yisrael within our families and our community. I can't help but wonder, however, how many of those Bonei Yisrael would actually be willing to choose to become B'nai Yisrael if we actually offered a true invitation? Every marketer knows that the most important way to gauge how much someone values a product or a program is the way they answer the question, would you recommend this to a friend? Jews don't do that. We don't recommend Judaism to our friends or even our spouse. Why is that? I know we're allergic to the idea of proselytizing. It's the one part of the Schindler Outreach Program that never took hold. But I'm not talking about knocking on people's doors with a Hebrew Bible. I'm talking about sharing what is most meaningful to you with others, with people you love, those who are seeking a roadmap for living with purpose. Throughout Jewish history, you should know, whenever Jews felt safe, we sought new adherents. This moment in America should be such a time. Proudly, Central Synagogue has not shied away from making conversion accessible and inviting. 14 years ago, Rabbi Peter Rubenstein hired Rabbi Lisa Rubin to start our Center for Exploring Judaism, which has welcomed 1,600 students and overseen more than 500 conversions to date. During COVID, we offered remote classes and now have students from over 20 countries. Our Center for Exploring Judaism is the largest program of its kind in any synagogue, but it's not nearly enough. We will need the entire Jewish community to prioritize this. And that includes every Jew here and everyone watching. Because I think one of the greatest obstacles to more people converting is our judgments. Al-Chet, for judging Judaism as not worthy of sharing. I remember when a woman named Barbara came through our Exploring Judaism class. She'd been married to a Jew for over a decade before she finally realized she could find a spiritual home for herself in Judaism. Weeks before her Giyur, her conversion ceremony, a murderer killed 11 Jews at Pittsburgh's Tree of Life synagogue. Barbara's wife, Ruth, asked her, "Why in the world would you want to join such a hated people?" Barbara not only joined the Jewish people, she took on the Hebrew name of Rose Mallinger, one of the Pittsburgh victims. Ruth resisted, but Barbara insisted, "Your people are my people." But before we leave our list of al-Khaits, there's more we need to atone for communally when it comes to the convert. Al-Khait, for privately thinking that Jews by choice are somehow less authentic Jews. Al-Khait, for stubbornly clinging to a holy seed identity, which sees Judaism as an ethnic, racial club you can only join by birth. I think of my non-Jewish Korean mother, who was always warmly welcomed in my Tacoma synagogue as a guest. No one ever suggested, you could actually join our people. My mother loved Judaism, but believed she would never really be seen as a Jew, even if she converted, that she would be a perpetual stranger. But do you know, the word ger in the Bible means stranger, and the process to convert to Judaism is called giyur, which is from the verb lahit gayer, to make someone into a stranger. Now, at first, this seems backwards. Isn't conversion making a stranger into a Jew? The deeper meaning is, when someone chooses to become a Jew, they are choosing to become a stranger. Abraham is the first ger. He's called to leave his homeland and has to become a stranger in order to become the first Jew. Ruth also leaves her homeland of Moab to become our most famous ger and ultimately to redeem us all. Being a stranger and how it calls us to empathy, compassion, and justice, that is the essence of what it means to be a Jew. So for those of you who have considered conversion but feel like you don't know enough, or you can't play Jewish geography, or you sometimes feel like you're on the outside, you should know this is what it means to have the soul of a stranger. And there's nothing more Jewish than that. Every time someone chooses to join our people, they remind us of this truth and what is most beautiful and proud in our tradition. Like Lasidi, a new Jew who shared with us what Judaism calls her to do, saying, "I will remember Adam chose knowledge over immortality and cherished the Torah, knowing that God is in those pages. I will give tzedakah knowing it's not charity, but justice. I will remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. I will raise Jewish children who will know that despite being enslaved people, their ancestors saw that human life was sacred and that we were all equal before God." Wouldn't you recommend that to a friend? This year, let us shed the harsh judgments of Ezra and pick up the courageous mantle of Ruth, the outsider who was willing to journey to a new strange place out of her devotion and love. Our tradition teaches that our survival, our Jewish continuity, indeed our very redemption, depends on it. Ki la asher telchi eilech. Wherever you go, you know I'll follow. Uva asher talini ali. Wherever your journey takes you, I'll stay with you. Don't ask me now to leave you, to go back to my home. My past will always stay with me, but this new place is my own. Amech ami, velohayich Elohai. Your people are my people, and your God, my God. Ki el asher talchi eilech. Wherever you go, you know I'll follow. Uva asher talini ali. Wherever your journey takes you, I'll stay with you.
ובאשר תמותי אמות, ושם אקבר אלוהייך אלוהי. And where you choose your final resting place, that's where I too will be buried. Elohai, Elohai.
Ki el asher telchi eilech. Wherever you go, you know I'll follow. Uva asher talini ali. Wherever your journey takes you, I'll stay with you.